The Florida Gators are off to a good start in recruiting. Or are they?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into the portal. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making the portal your first listen each and every day. I'd love to have you in each and every day moving forward to talk recruiting and some of the transfer portal and some NIL. And today, all of that comes together with our guy, Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators, who just loves talking about recruiting right now for the Gators. It's really hard to decipher. There's no nice way to say this. I start to think they're going to get the momentum. Then I don't. Brandon shaking his head for those of you that are listening to this podcast. Brandon, what's going on, man? How you been?
Would be a lot better if Florida had some more traction on the recruiting trail, which I understand. You know, it's February. We were doing the same song and dance last year, and Florida didn't have a ton. But this is also a thing where when Scott Stricklin put out that statement that, hey, Billy Napier's not getting fired, he's going to be our coach in 2025 again, that I kind of called it, you know, for 2025. That's great. It helps you get some commits for that 2025 class, but everybody and their mother and father, who, you know, parents are very involved in recruiting at this point. Everybody is going to know that Billy Napier made it through 2024 by the skin of his teeth. And if your biggest concern for the 2025 recruiting class was, you know, I don't know if Billy Napier is going to have a job next year, that's going to be a concern for 2026 as well. Like that was the thing. We heard it with the 2024 class, Jameer Grimsley. He was the one that publicly, he was like, yeah, I went to Alabama because I thought they'd have more coach stability. And then Nick Saban retired. But him saying
Right.
Coach stability kind of implies, I don't know if Billy Napier is going to be there long term. And then 2025 class was bad. Scott Stricklin's statement saves the 2025 class. But 2026, you're going to be going through the same thing until you prove yourself on the field during the season.
I 100% agree. And to that point, here's something that's really important. If they would just have a good spring, bring in the right guys, at least get themselves in a position with all these unofficial visits. Right now is a dead period for people that don't know. March 1st, 2nd, something like that, it starts up again. If they can get kids in, I've said this a million times, Florida is a top 5 job if you do it right. It's not hard. It's in Florida. It's the state university. It's in Gainesville. It's a nice campus. They have history. They got a cool stadium, and they have still screwed it up. So I know that kills you, but as a Gators fan, but tell me the following, just yay or nay. They will use NIL properly this summer to finalize deals for the big name guys. Yay or nay? No, that means no. That
So I'm gonna say maybe. I can't even. So here's my thing with yay or naying that one is that they've just made multiple front office hires. So
Okay, sure.
Billy doesn't have as much. He's obviously going to have a ton of control, but Billy's not doing as much of that legwork there. They hired Ben Elsner from the 33rd team. They hired Nick Polk, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, for almost 2 decades and spent the past year or two with Athletes First, so a sports agency. So maybe. I do think that having those guys means that Florida just might spend more on offensive tackle, edge, quarterback, wide receiver, and cornerback. Analytics tell you those are the most important positions in football. Nick Polk was with Thomas Dimitroff for almost 2 decades with the Atlanta Falcons. That was a very important priority for Thomas Dimitroff. So I would think that working in that mindset and mentality for 2 decades would give you that similar mindset and mentality. So if Florida looks at some of these guys like Emmanuel Iheanacho, maybe you spend on those premium positions to get those guys locked in, because I do think that the front office is really going to start hammering those spots.
Well, I find it interesting because they're in on a gazillion guys. You and I were talking before the show about some of their official visits. They've got 5 offensive linemen, a key spot for them in this class, lined up according to 24/7 Sports. Shout out to them for keeping the list together for all the OVs. But that's a great sign. Bear McWhorter, a kid that I just saw this past weekend at Under Armour. He's a really powerful player from the state of Georgia. By the way, his dad, ironically, went to school with Billy. Can't make this stuff up. That's so random. But they have a shot at kids like that all over the South. And then in-state, they already got 3 kids committed. One may not end up committed. We'll see if Jalen Waters sticks around. Rumors with Miami are pretty hot and heavy. But they've got good players. Will Griffin's one of the better quarterbacks in the country at a Jesuit in Tampa that I know well. Got a cannon for an arm. He's an Under Armour All-American. I think they're in a pretty good spot. It's just to get over the hump, I need to see them do well in the next month or so. That's why I give that they're doing well in recruiting, or are they? That's how I started the intro, and that was not coincidental. I think they're okay, but they got to finalize with getting the kids on campus. And then I think if they're not 100% in on being together on who they want, the management team, Billy and his staff, that's going to be a disaster because then you don't even get to the NIL discussion. That's a problem. Give me a couple of kids that you think they've got a great shot at and why.
I think one name that we need to talk about is Braylon Womack from Brandon, Mississippi. He is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's someone that when Vinny Sinceri came over from Washington, that was the big thing. They were like, hey, Vinny Sinceri has a fantastic relationship with Braylon Womack. The Florida Gators are now in on Braylon Womack because Vinny Sinceri is here. I feel like if that's the thing you're going to push the day he gets hired, then that's a player that you have to be really in on and you have to feel really good about it. If that's the one player that we go, oh, Florida's going to be in on him because of Vinny Sinceri. You could look at Malik Morris out of Lakeland with someone that Florida has built a lot of traction with. And they've done, look, we can criticize Florida for a lot of things, but their linebacker recruiting has been pretty damn good in the past couple of years. And so Malik Morris being added to that would be huge. You mentioned Bear McWhorter. I feel like when we talk about Bear now, we have to talk about the Billy Napier playing with his dad thing because, I mean, we've gone on this show 1,000 times saying relationships matter in recruiting. And I do feel like that's having a pretty good relationship with a parent when parents are involved in this process. Yeah,
Anna Hickey from 24/7 Sports reported that in an interview. She was at the event that I was at. I didn't interview Bear, but she did. So shout out to her. But that's important. He made some kind of comment like, I've known him most of my life or something like that. That has to help.
Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. And let me tell you, right now, for me, it is incredibly busy because it is the NFL offseason, which means pumping out content, especially when your team sucks with the New York Giants. So I'm incredibly busy during NFL offseason time. I do back work for Locked On, and then we have, of course, Locked On Gators every day. Sometimes I don't feel like cooking a dang meal. So I eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
Can Florida's O-line recruiting take a step up with what I would consider to be a subpar recruiter as the O-line coach? I know they got other people helping, but he's not a closer. Most O-line coaches are not the most cute and cuddly guys when it comes to recruiting. But again, this is Florida. It shouldn't be that hard. And they need players there. So, I mean, I'll just go down the list of a couple of the guys that they have set up for visits. And I don't know all these guys personally, but like Chancellor Barclay is a kid I do know. First Academy is an interior offensive lineman. I think it will be Clemson or Florida. You can't lose a kid like that. That's a really good player. And I think he's a 4-star level player. Not everybody has him ranked that, but he's really good. They got him coming in. They got Brandon Anderson, a kid that was at Under Armour, a big, powerful player. needs some time in the weight room, kind of change his body, but he's got the frame. Zyke Helton, another kid from Georgia, really talented player, plays at Carrollton. He's coming in for a visit. That's a great start, and that's not all. They got Johnny Jones from Berkeley Prep coming in. They've got Ginevra Carr coming in from IMG Academy, a pure power player. They have the guys. If they can't close with their need on O-line, they got to make a change at O-line. I'm sorry. You have to be able to get kids like that at UF. Most of these kids are fairly local. Most of them have built a relationship by coming on campus, so that's really important. Put you on the spot. If you had to pick a couple of, I'd say 2-3 guys, best bets to be a Gator before the summer over, who would you go with? These are probably guys that are going to visit next month because they're not visiting in March unless it's a kid from far, far away. There's a few of those, but who would you go with as guys that Gator fans should look out for?
I think Kaden Hall's one. They've got, of his official visits set up, Florida's got the first one, which I do feel like is usually
good sign.
Pretty good sign for an eventual commitment. Camden Jensen, the tight end from Colorado. Not sure what that whole process is going to be like because he, blue chip tight end, but national where his offers are and his final 10. And Isaiah Williams is one that we're always going to talk about. He's someone who's been very open about, loves Florida, loves what they've done, loves the defensive coaching staff that he spoke to a ton last year, but never really finished off a flip. I feel like those are some names that you've got to look at and say, okay, Florida's in there. Kaden Prothro is someone that they've put a lot of effort into. Russ Callaway, co-OC / tight ends coach. Rumor is he's going to get the full OC title, not play calling duties, but full OC title. And I do think that he's spent quite a bit of time with Kaden Prothro and Russ Callaway. So trying to land him there, it's going to be tough, obviously, getting a tight end out of the state of Georgia when the University of Georgia is recruiting them. But I do think that those are some names that Florida should be looking forward to making some progress with over the next little bit.
What about Hezzy Kent, the kid out of Brunswick, Georgia? They can't take every tight end. Florida's got him on campus for an OV May 30th. It's another kid. Like, he's a really athletic guy. Big guy, could end up being an offensive lineman, but like, what do you think? They always steal a couple kids that Georgia really wants out of the Peach State. It's kind of weird because like Georgia will go just house them on the field and then get beat by them in recruiting. It's so weird. What is the deal with that?
Hey, I mean, look, I will criticize Billy Napier for a billion things. I will criticize his coaching staff for a billion things. But every time I've spoken to them, heard them speak, they sound like they're just really genuinely nice people. And that helps when you talk about recruiting and you talk about the relationship building process with parents, especially. Like, we hear it every year. Oh yeah, the parents love Billy. The parents love that Billy texts my kid's mom every day. Billy does, like, they are really good at hammering home the parents part of this. And look, I spoke to a couple of recruits' parents last week, 2 weeks ago, and they were like, oh, during the recruiting process, like, Billy was a huge part of it. Like, he's such a great guy, and he was always contacting us. Like, it's just that not being pushy, but being persistent and giving off just genuinely nice vibes. Look, I spent all fall going, hey, like, I think it's time for Florida to move on from Billy Napier. And when I saw Billy at the Senior Bowl, he was just like, hey, like, I'm the head coach of Florida. It comes with the territory. Like, I get, like, I basically said that you should be fired. And you're like, yeah, man, it's cool. Like, I get it. That kind of stuff is just, they seem like great people. I wish they work out. It's just a matter of actually working out.
What about Samarian Wingo out of St. Aug? He's a receiver, Miami, Florida. He's got a ton of offers. Florida has built quite a wide receiver room, to be honest with you. It's pretty impressive right now. They need at least one guy every year. I mean, it's again, this shouldn't be hard. In Florida, if you struggle with wide receiver recruiting, the entire staff should be fired.
Yep.
That's kind of how I look at it.
When the game tips, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I told you guys yesterday about the bet that I made on Monday night. That was chef's kiss. San Antonio Spurs against the Washington Wizards, Cleveland Cavs against Minnesota Timberwolves, Oklahoma City Thunder against the New Orleans Pelicans, Los Angeles Lakers against the Utah Jazz. I bet all 4 of those teams to score 100 points in the first 3 quarters of the game. They all did it. I had them parlayed plus 7,534. $10, a $10 bet from the Eli Manning Kick of Destiny win on Super Bowl Sunday. Took that $10, threw it on that parlay, walked away with $753.43. It was beautiful. I loved it. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You could be a dead goat and recruit receivers to the swamp, in my opinion. Anybody, him or anybody else at wide receiver, you feel like, okay, we got a real shot here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Samarian Wingo would be a guy. Jabari Brady would be another name that we're going to talk about. And these are all guys that they can commit tomorrow. And I think you and I would sit here and go, I'll see where they sign on signing day.
Right. They're Florida kids.
Yeah, Florida kids, when it's a Florida, Miami, Florida State. If you have 2 of those 3 schools in the mix,
yes,
I'm not counting you out until you've signed that paper. And even then, I might be a little concerned that you're going to request a release from there. So I do think Florida has a really great selling point right now when we talk about receivers with any of the other in-state schools of just, you've got DJ Lagway.
100%.
You've done a great job recruiting receivers. And if we're going to negatively recruit, I think Florida has a really good negative recruit over both Miami and Florida State here, where they could just say, like, you could say everything Cam Ward did, and that was great. He had a fantastic year. But you can always look at these receivers in high school and say, and we know how negative recruiting goes, but for Florida, you can look at them and say, hey, you don't know who's going to be your quarterback. Like, they can tell you, hey, this is who we have. But both of these schools have consistently gone into the portal to replace a quarterback. So don't listen to them when they say who's going to be your quarterback, because they're probably lying to you at this point with how often they have, again, gone into the portal, gotten a new starting guy that he's your Heisman winner. That's what we're selling. That doesn't matter if you're a high school receiver. You're not going to play with that guy. You don't know who's still going to be on campus or if they're going to over-recruit that position. That's got to be your best selling point if you're Florida when you're talking about any of these receivers or anybody that is involved with quarterback. That's your selling point.
Yeah, that's a big deal, man. You got to know, got to have that relationship, and there's got to be confidence in it long term. Last question, and I'll get you out of here on this one, Brandon. Florida, for this class to be successful, again, early signing day will be in early December. That's a long time. If on signing day they have a top 10 class, which again, this is Florida, it should not be that hard. For them to have a top 10 class, besides obviously Billy's doing well on the field so that he gets a vote of confidence again, what do they got to do to win on the recruiting trail?
Honestly, I think it comes down to the wins. That's
the only thing.
Job security. That's the thing. It's the job security.
Are you hearing that this come up a lot? Is that what this is? Because I haven't acquired.
That's going to be a thing. Yeah. Trust me.
Okay, so I was trying to avoid that, but that's all it is.
It's that, or you got to go spend a ton of money on kids. But even then, if you lose games, that's going to go right out the window anyway. We saw it happen with, I'm not going to name specific names, but we saw it happen with kids before. So it doesn't matter. You can go spend the money on these kids in the summer. Look at the 2024 class and how that changed drastically when they started losing games. Like, yeah, you can get more involved with the kids that are more NIL oriented, but if you don't win games, it's not going to matter at all.
It's so wild how a school like Florida's in this spot.
Super
and it's just like hovering. They're just barely treading water. It's the worst.
Yeah, they're in a rough situation. I think they've got a fantastic roster. I just have no confidence in the coaching staff to actually win game in, game out, and do that. It's just.
Who do the Gators open up with this fall?
They get Long Island University. They
Okay,
started.
so
They got the
who's their first home game that you're like, okay, this will be interesting?
first home game that'll be interesting. I mean, no, they're on the road against LSU.
Well, that's important for a lot of reasons.
That'll be one hell of a game. That is their first Power 4 opponent. So their first home game that's interesting isn't until Texas, week 7.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah,
So
because they
the
start with
reason I asked that, it's when you have big home games, it's easy to get recruits there.
Yep.
I mean, if I was a recruit and I lived in the, anything Alabama, Georgia, or Florida, I'd at least be interested in going to that game if I could. That's cool. But gosh, week 7, you would hope you'd have that in week 1 or 2, so you can get the kids that could work against them in the end.
Yeah, they've got LIU, then South Florida, then they're on the road for LSU, Miami, and then bye week, and then Texas. So week 6.
So it's still October though. That's like early October.
Yeah, it's October 4th. October 4th.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes.
Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free by visiting the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back Monday. Hopefully there's no breaking news. I am taking a little trip this weekend, so we'll be unavailable. So hopefully no breaking news, but if there is, we'll get to it Monday. And yeah, hopefully Florida Gators continue. Hot basketball stretch right now. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work for New York Giants on SI, and I will see you all next time.